Good evening. I'm Dan Ozesmere, Chair of the BET, and I'd like to start the meeting, the regular June meeting of the full BET. This is June 7th at 6:31 PM, and I would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item 2, we have a list of routine applications, and our clerk, Nisha War, is going to read them off.
Thanks, Dan. PW1, Public Works in the amount of $500,000 for continue in force of Glenville Center. PW2, Public Works in the amount of $50,000, a continue in force for Hamel Rink improvements. PW3, Public Works in the amount of $325,000, continue in force for the Greenwich Point. ED8 from the Board of Ed, $129,000, continue in force for a generator replacement. GM2, which is GEMS, $4,782,305 for a release of conditions for the contribution to GEMS. Law 1, Law Department, $275,000, an additional appropriation to cover outside legal fees. HD4, Health Department, $289,089, approval to use the ELC COVID grant. And TA1, TAG, $154,000, a release of conditions as a contribution to their first half.
So I move those routine applications?
Leslie Tarkington moves it.
Second.
Leslie Moriarty with the second. Okay. Can you do a roll call vote on that?
We need a roll call?
Do we need a roll call?
Oh, any objections? No objections? Okay. That passes by unanimous consent, 11-0-0. Our colleague, Stephen Selps, is not with us tonight. Thank you. Okay. Item 3, the Assessor's Report. Lauren Elliott, thank you.
Good thing you came early.
Yeah, that's a record, 3 minutes, whew. Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Slow us down, Lauren.
Oh, no, don't you worry, I've never really been that long-winded, if y'all haven't figured that out by now. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the Assessor's Report for June 2023. On Monday, we sent the tax bill file to Quality Data for all the tax bills to be printed. We are hoping that the tax bills will go out sometime around June 16th or thereafter. They have to be out by the end of the month, but hopefully we'll get them out by the middle of the month. All seniors and disabled, as well as the firefighters, we've applied all those credits to the tax bills that will be showing up on this July's tax bill. In addition, basically, I think we had an estimate around $900,000 of credits for the seniors, the disabled, and the firefighters. Income and expense reports were due back to my office on June 1st. Those are sent out to all commercial properties who lease out their properties. We sent out 787 this year, and we got a good return. We got about 644 of those back. One final thing is we are going to resume by the end of the month our residential inspections. We are going to hopefully have all of the properties that have not been inspected since 2016. Hopefully by the end of the summer we will have all those properties done. Does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
Okay, Laura?
So on the residential permits, there is a large variance this month?
Yes.
Is there an exception in there?
There's a $20 million building permit for a residential house that's going on the property down by off of Indian Field. I believe what used to be the Scott Franz's property, subdivided down there, and there's a building permit for $20 million. A residential building permit, single-family home.
Okay.
Nice house, I'm sure.
And
Leslie?
I just wanted to note with the applications for senior tax credits, just to compare it to our budget that we had, there were total of 900,000 for tax credits for fiscal '24. Is that the correct way to interpret that information?
Those are, the 900,180 is the actual amount.
Actual amount, and just to compare it to what we had in our budget schedule, we had $1 million for those line items, 850 for seniors for the local, and 150 for the state.
So yeah, we should be. We did have a fair amount of seniors, if you'll notice. We went from 128, on the state program, 128 seniors down to 113. We had a fair amount of sales of seniors selling their homes. We do always have a few pass away, but we had a majority of those differences were sales.
And again, the
Yes,
market value of the homes, the 100% of the assessed value, the 100% value for senior tax relief is almost $2.7 million. So there really is a value. So there's really a lot of opportunity, depending on income, to apply if seniors choose to do it.
Seeing no further questions, can I get a motion to accept?
I move to accept the assessor's report.
Seconded.
Leslie Tarkington, second, Jeff Raymer.
Thank you.
Any objections? Okay, that passes 11-0-0. Okay, next we have our Controllers Report, Pete Minarski.
Good evening, everyone. Controllers report. I'll start out with my monthly ARPA, American Rescue Plan report. The good news is that out of the 47 projects listed on the report that's attached to the back of the controllers report, 26 of them have been completely obligated. When I say obligated, some of that is encumbered, so they're at zero balances. And the interest income continues to rise with the money that's invested, and it shows up in the treasurer's report. We're up about to over 500,000 at 569,992. And then the next topic is an interesting one. I'm sure you've ever seen the ads. I see them on Channel 12, where the treasurer, whoever it may be, sends out notices notifying people that there's checks out there to be claimed. It's called the Unclaimed Check Program. You can go on a website. I think the Greenwich Time does it once or twice a year. Last year, I went on the site. Now, in the past, I've usually gone on and looked to see if my name's on there or my relatives, but I went to look for Town of Greenwich checks, and I was stunned that there was hundreds of checks out there. Now, that's a little bit misleading because, for example, the Housing Authority shows up as a Town of Greenwich check, and some of the nonprofits, they all start out with Town of Greenwich. So I applied, and I was in contact with someone at the Unclaimed Office of the Treasurers, and there was a couple hundred checks, and I said, do I have to apply for each one of these individually? He says, no. He says, there's a form and you can do them globally. You just type in the numbers and you could, instead of each application, you could do, in my case, a couple hundred. So I applied, and one of the restrictions is that they wanted me to prove that a bank check, say for $100 or $1,000, I had to go back to a Citibank or People's 20 years ago and prove that it was the Town of Greenwich's. So I figured that this wasn't going to work, but I'll apply for it anyway. And in January, I got a check for $2,000 and changed, 2022, where they approved 11 of the checks. So I said, okay, but I figured the other couple hundred are gone. About a month ago, the state treasurer, the new one, Eric Russell, I believe his name is, Sean Wooden was the one I applied for under the previous administration. They sent me this about 30 pages of unclaimed checks. And the instructions were, it says, do these belong to you? So I went through, and there was 20-something of them were actually belonged to the Housing Authority. They were, I guess, I don't know, they was Armstrong Court, Wilbur Peck addresses, et cetera, et cetera. So I asked them what to do. They said, cross them off, send it in, and prove that you are an employee for the town of Greenwich. And I sent them my ID and my business card. And about a week ago, I got a check for over $60,000. It's in the controller's report, the exact number between the two. So it's something, I mean, we can do annually, and
Thank
if
you
it's
for your
that easy,
initiative.
yeah.
Thank you.
Now,
Can we have a big party?
we're going to Stanwich. I forgot what I was, but one of the things that struck me is late last summer, I couldn't understand why there was over 200 checks that we never cashed. And I didn't really find the answer, but I interviewed a bunch of people. They were predominantly parking violations, false alarms. There was a number of rebate checks for accounts payable and some town clerk, but we looked at it, the staff looked at it, and I interviewed people in parking services. Unfortunately, almost everybody, a lot of them were for the late 1990s, early 2000s. There was nobody around to explain what the process was. So we never figured out why there was a couple hundred checks. But anyway, the good news is we got it $62,000. The next is the annual audit. The staff, we started to panic because I don't know if you all know, a key accounting person at the Board of Education, Pat Marinan, who used to work for me, used to work for Roland, used to work for Ron Lally's internal auditor, applied for and got a job as a deputy deputy finance director at the city of Danbury. So we contacted the auditors, and we panicked, and we had a Teams meeting, which is the equivalent of a Zooms meeting, yesterday. And we said, we want to expedite this as quick as possible because Pat, who was on the call, is leaving. So we got a commitment that they're going to send a draft of the audit out the end of this week. And hopefully, I take the Word document and marry it to the Excel spreadsheets. We'll have the audit done in time for June 30th. However, we've already started the 2023 audit, so we're working on two audits at the same time. So hopefully this will be an issue that falls off the controller's report. I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions. Mr. Weisbrod?
Mr. Minarski, I have two questions. Question number one, how did the May 25th, May 26th test run of the Munis go?
I am going to defer to Roland. He's actually one of the key people because he's impacted.
The test went quite well for what we were doing. The functionality hasn't changed at all. It's simply the fact that it's cloud-based now, so we're going in through the internet. But other than that, underneath it all looks very
So
very similar to what
we
we have.
expect to launch by the September date, I'm sorry, that we're talking.
At this point, yes.
Yeah.
We
We're
have
on
quite a
schedule.
bit more testing, test some year-end activities on it, things like that, but
And my second question is, we discussed it this morning in the IAC, the investment portfolio, and it was apparent that we are in an inverse yield curve on interest rates, and so the first 1 and 2 year rates are higher than 4 and 5 years, right? So I was thinking, actually it came up from someone else, but it made me think about this, that is there a way that we can take advantage of the inverse yield curve to eliminate the ban and just go to the 5-year bond? Wouldn't we be saved, to the extent that we have any flexibility on that, wouldn't we benefit from that inverse curve by not incurring the larger interest rates for the bands that we would?
Okay, the we is the BET. We have a debt policy and we have a fund balance policy that we have a process where we do it every 2 years. You could simply, plural, the BET, when we take this up in the next 6 months or so, we could simply give me the discretion, because we don't know what the interest rates, I had this discussion with Bill Lindsay over a month ago. Give me the discretion, and each year, depending on how the rates are trending, I can make that decision. And of course, I report back to the BET that I'm doing it, and I would do it through the IAC. So the we is the BET, and you need to change the policy, the debt policy, to give me that discretion. I don't know if that was an adequate answer.
That's a very adequate answer. And so, I mean, I'm looking to Bill Drake, the chair of the IAC, and/or others on the BET as to how, if there's any interest in that, since we have the authority to do it, and it would save us, a significant amount of money.
I mean, certainly we, in the second year of every term, we do debt policy and fund balance policy, so we can certainly discuss it there.
Well, no, I don't think it's a question. I think we have the authority now. It exists. So we don't have to wait for the debt policy or the fund balance.
Well, I think the next time you do debt is in January or February anyway, right?
Yes,
sure.
I start structuring the borrowings in November. I look at the cash flows, okay, and then I have all the way up until the end of December to structure. That is, we roll over the first tranche of bands, and I adjust it based on the cash flows from the previous projection, and then in the second one, I size up the second tranche of bands. The point I was trying to make is that that's the policy. I mean, if the BET agreed to go straight to a bond, we can go straight to a bond based on, I mean, I don't know what the interest rates are going to be when we go to market in January. We had that exact conversation, and we both came to the same conclusion, is that's today. We're not going to market today. We don't know what it's going to be like 9 months from now, or when I had the conversation.
Right, and maybe, Pete, the way to follow that up is if you start the structure in December, sometime before that, do a review where the rates are, and then we can have a conversation on
Sure.
IC and figure out, what we do. Oh, yeah, sorry, Jeff.
So I don't think it needs to be as dramatic as changing our debt policy. Our debt policy can be there, but in the discretion of the controller, as you're coming up to a point at which you're ready now to go out and, to market, if as you look at the interest rates at that point, if at that point you think it would be in our interest not to do bands but to do a 5-year bond, come to us, put it on the agenda, make that recommendation, and we can authorize it as a one-off. To make it something as formal as a changing of the debt policy, I feel like I'm going to create friction. I'm going to have some people who I'm making uncomfortable. It's just a one-off because we're capitalizing on a brief moment in time in the economy. The resolution, the bonding resolution, authorized borrowing at a maturity of not more than thus and so. We're not violating the bonding resolution. The bonding resolution is there. It's strictly, as the controller said, a question of he's doing something a little different than a policy, and we can amend the policy on a one-off.
We're missing the most important key point here. Let's say I have that distraction, and what I was normally going to do in January was bond 40 million. So let's say that I decide to bond 80 million. Your debt service is going to go from 40 million divided by 5 to 80 million divided by 5. So you've just put $8 million more into the budget. So instead of 20% of 40 million, you just made a huge impact to the budget, and it's part of the decision process. And you follow what I'm saying as far as
Well,
the
when
impact
you-
on the budget? The debt service would double for that year, from going from we usually have 5 general fund outstanding, usually 35 or 40 falls off. If you're going to add 80, and Roland's probably got in his, when he's the enabler that goes to Ben, he says that we're going to have debt service on 40 million. He'll go down based on my decision in November,
But wouldn't you
December.
have the same, you're still going to borrow with the band. It's not like you're just exchanging the band for the bond. So I don't see where it affects the debt service. You're not borrowing new money.
No, but the debt service kicks in 2 years earlier. It's the first year is when you get hit, okay? And then it's smooth after that. You follow that the first year, yeah.
Can I
After
make-
that, it's smooth, but the first year would have like a $8 million hit.
If it's in our financial interest to do it, and that's the recommendation you're making, that so the BET can take it up at that time, and they can weigh the budget impact as part of the decision.
Well, let's not, I don't think we want to.
Yeah. Can I just,
No,
can I just say
I
something?
could-
Look,
this
about it?
is-
I
this
think
is
I think
excellent.
it's a good question, it's a good discussion,
could
but
come
I think
November-
I think we should have the discussion at
Yeah.
IAC in a more structured way.
Exactly,
And,
yeah.
and just, I think it'd be much more productive. But again, thanks for the discussion, and we'll certainly do what's in our financial interest. Yeah, Leslie.
Just to add one point, because you made a reference to the debt policy committee to look at the language. The language already allows this to happen. It says a controller can recommend earlier implementation of long-term debt financing if circumstances so warrant. So
Understood.
it's
I think the
already in
intent,
there.
yeah, the intent was to talk about IAC and if there's a
Yes.
recommendation to forward. Thank you for the clarification, Leslie. Okay. Any other questions for Pete?
I had
No. Leslie? And then Leslie.
I just had one comment back on ARP, and this is, I don't know if this is to Pete or really to a request for our board to make, but one of the larger outstanding line items is for the Affordable Housing Trust. And we do know that the trust has been active in working with developers there, and there's been commentary about how they're going to move ahead for it. But one of the conditions we have on those funds is to get some finality that allowing us to make a loan to a developer, when that money gets repaid, it creates a fund for future loans of that same principal, that it doesn't need to be returned to the government. And we asked the Housing Trust to give us confirmation of the ability to use the funds in that manner. They shouldn't wait until the first item comes to, loan that they want to make comes, and where they come back to us to release the funds, because I don't want us to be in a hurry up and make a decision, and if we have questions, it holds up an investment that they want to make. So maybe this question is really to our chair, but can we just contact the trust to find out their timeframe for meeting that requirement? Because if we can get that one behind us, it'll provide more clarity.
Yes, I can do that.
I have a question, on these loans, this gets a bit more complicated because we've never been in the loan business as such, except one very complicated situation I can remember, which was Parsonage Cottage. Do we get involved with these loans? I mean, Leslie's talking about this, or is this simply the housing trust?
The housing trust is on the town's books. It's a trust fund. It will go, basically, the auditors let me keep it out of the annual comprehensive financial report as of '22, because there was only $5,000. No, I think it was only $2,000 at the time, as far as contributions, and I have to put it in for July 1st. So what would happen is that all the money in and out flows through the town's books, okay? It's a trust fund. The problem with the loan is that, well, first of all, they would probably have to set the interest rate, but let's say that it's a monthly repayment. My first question is one of the volunteers on the trust fund going to go out and start chasing bankrupt contractors or cash flow strapped contractors? Who's going to enforce if they're notoriously 10 days late every month? Are we going to impose fees? I don't know how many loans they would issue, but to answer your question, and the question I have is that who's going to keep track of the loan repayments as far as compliance?
I know, I mean, coming from some of this background, I know once you get into this, can be pretty complicated, that's why. So I think there's a lot to think about on this issue.
Well, we've already appropriated those funds.
Don't we have a period where we're going to review it with them and with the opportunity to claw it back? Isn't that what I recall?
There is a time
If
limitation.
I believe
If it's
if their
not-
money is not encumbered by, I think, July, August of '24, then we would take it back. But in terms of the conditions that Leslie mentioned, I mean, it's up to the trust to, demonstrate that the condition has been satisfied. And as Leslie said, I think the key one that we still don't have an answer to is the loan question. I know many people on the board have asked that question. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Pete? Leslie.
I move that we accept, I'm sorry, it's not
Yeah.
a question. I move that we accept the controller's report.
Okay, second? Is there a second? Okay. Leslie Tarkenton, Jeff Raymer, any objections? That's accepted by unanimous consent, 11-0-0. Thank you, Pete. Now we have our treasurer's report.
Okay,
Treasurer's report.
what I'll do is at the IAC meeting this morning, Ms. Tarkenton asked a question, and I responded to it. And being that I think there was only 6 people there, I will repeat the answers to the question and go through the treasurer's report. And I'll add a little bit to it. I'll start with, you'll have the treasurer's report in front of you, the general fund. And one of the questions that has come up is the tax bills, which Lauren talked about. She sent it out Monday. Heather has said that she's trying to get the tax bills out by next week, but I believe they're available online at a date where you can see it and pay it before you actually get your tax bill. The reason I bring that up is that last year, we had $53.7 million of prepayments, okay? With the interest rates where they are, hopefully, the quicker we get it, the quicker we can get it invested. In the year before, we had it at $32.7 million of taxes that were paid before July 1st. And what was interesting, the year before, it was $4.4 million. However, Governor Lamont issued an executive order, and you didn't have to pay until October 1st. So we actually had $4.4 million of prepayments. But the 32 million was a record, and that was broke by the 53 million. In the general fund, we're 17.7 million ahead of last year. One of the key factors is the levy was 11.1 million higher than last year. And the cash balances, they could be affected by something as simple as when a payroll lands, and the payroll is like $9.5 million. OPEB, again, we had the OPEB report from our treasurer, and they, year-to-date, they're earning 7.93%, where the retirement board is earning, they're flat fiscal year-to-date. I don't have the May 31st, so I don't imagine that they're going to go up much for that month, because the OPEB board had a negative return. Capital projects, we have a healthy 62.4. That was helped by the $10 million that we returned because of the ARP money that we repurposed. We borrowed it for soil remediation, repurposed it. And we spend a lot in the summertime, so that's going to draw down quickly as we get to December, January. Capital non-recurring is, the balance is 8.1. If you recall, when we did the budget for 2023, we took $8 million out. So if we had not taken that $8 million use of capital non-recurring fund balance, that balance would be at least 16 million. And then for fiscal, the 24 budget, we took another 4 million. So the 8 will go back down to 4, and then we replenish it with the closeout of the Z fund, the capital projects that are financed by the mill rate. Parking fund actually is doing better than we expected. The balance from July 1st is an increase of 890,000. So that fund we thought would be trending lower, and we'll address that again in the February budget deliberations. Sewer maintenance, we used fund balance of 5 million last year, and We thought we were only going to give you 1 or 2 million. We ended up with 4 million. And based on the conversations this morning at the IAC, we're going to, Miriam actually came up with the idea, and it goes to the fund balance policy, is we have a fund balance policy for the general fund, which the credit rating agencies look at, and they like to see that. The credit rating agencies don't spend much time looking at fund balances in some of the other funds. I mean, for example, because of COVID, the school lunch fund went negative, about 800,000 or 900,000. It's been tremendously replenished because of the funding that's come from the state. So we're going to come up with a formal recommendation, we meaning Roland, myself, for the finance department, to try to address that every year so that we can have a fund balance policy relative to using fund balance in the budget process. And then the risk fund, the 3.746 is not current. We pay the bills through the general fund. What's not reflected in here is the 930. There was 100,000. There was, I think, there was 4 payments. They add up to about $1,058,000. So the balance should really be $2,688,000. And then the golf course is $3 million. They continue to, their fund balance continues to increase dramatically. They're doing well. So I will stop there, and I'll answer any questions on the treasurer's report.
Any questions? Can I get a
So
motion to accept?
I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
Okay, Leslie Tarkington,
I'll second.
Leslie Moriarty. Motion by Leslie Tarkington, second by Leslie Moriarty. Any objections? Okay, that's accepted by a vote of 11-0-0. Okay, I think going through, there's some written reports from the building committees. Old business, none. Item 10, new business. We do have two items listed here. The acceptance of the Retirement Board Outsourced Chief Investment Officer and the acceptance of the Retirement Board and OPEB Board Actuarial Services Contract. We will not be taking action on these tonight. In discussions today, it came to my notice that there were no formal votes yet by those other entities, so we will bring that back in July and address those issues. Do you have anything to add to that, Miriam?
No. I mean, certainly the retirement board, it seems premature for us to vote because they are still, all of their just deliberation is still technically under executive session because the contract hasn't been signed. But we could separate and do the other because OPEB did vote on the actuary, but if we want to package them together and be clean for next month, and that causes no problem for Pete to sign a contract with the actuary, then we should just delay it.
No, I agree. The issue is that the retirement board is acting under the advice of the purchasing department and the law department, where they can't publicly say the names and publicly vote until the contract has been signed. So they've accepted and approved it in executive session, but not formally out of executive session. And the actuary reports, there's the charter requires the retirement board to hire an actuary. That was done in executive session. The OPEB piece was done at the IAC. And it'd be cleanest to do them all at the same time in July.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay,
Can I just ask a question? Because we were just talking here, and I mean, I should let Laura, but we were just talking about the sequence of the contract. I mean, how can they sign a contract if we're not approved, if we don't first approve it? I guess we're trying to understand the sequence of events.
It's contradictory. I agree with you. It's well, first of all, the retirement board is responsible for hiring the actuary and the corporate trustee. Okay, the issue is in the charter, section 208A, with the corporate trustee. The VET has to approve it. okay? And what happened was, it was a lengthy process in the 2016, running into 2017. We hired Ted Smoot, the lawyer out of New York, and we had to go completely through the process, and it's almost like you have to rubber stamp it. And I understand, it's contradictory, where you're at the tail end of it, but you don't get it until all the contract has been negotiated and agreed upon between the two parties. You're not
But
meaning.
they're not signing the contract until we approve it, is that correct? I mean, or are they signing the contract and then we're approving it?
Technically, the signature that goes on it, yes, would be after.
So what if we don't agree with it?
That's a problem. That's a problem.
So to me,
You know, it's an interesting problem because Jeff remembers
just
the
gonna
days
come to
where we
us,
used to do this with money managers, and it was controversial. But I mean, technically, you could overrule us, and.
but then you have a signed contract, so it just.
No,
Oh,
I'm saying
it's not
is.
signed until we approve. That's what
Yeah,
I just
yes,
asked.
yeah.
But Pete had said that, no, it comes signed.
It's
so-
negotiated, but not signed.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right,
the
that's what
way
I
it
wanted to make
goes
sure.
is that they'll sign it, but it's not a true contract until we sign it on the town side.
Okay, so there are two signatures, them and then the.
I'm the final
then
signature
you're
on
the
all
final
contracts.
signature. Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Karen and Pete. Okay, the next item is the approval of regular committee minutes from May 15th. Pete did send around a correction concerning the Budget Committee vote, and it's actually 1200, not 400. No, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. Yeah, right.
The BET is.
Yeah, BET vote, correct, the BET vote, right, is 1200, not 400. Can I get a motion to accept as amended?
So move to accept the minutes as amended by Mr. Menarski, or as amended.
Leslie Tarkington, second by, okay, I'll second it. Dan Ozesmer. Any objections? Okay, that's it. That passes 11-0-0. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move second.
Okay, any objections? 11-0-0, we adjourn at 7:08.
Wow.